What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I understand you want to start by talking about that little AI podcast thing that I played earlier in the day. You obviously heard it?
Yeah, I got to tell you, first of all, I want to thank you so very, very much for having done that, because we talk a lot about AI, and, you'll see examples of what AI can do in terms of written documents. But what you played, I thought was very, very instructive for two very important reasons. But the first thing is, the first segment that you did, where the AI have been informed that they're not AI, that they're not human, that they are in fact AI, and I'm going to just nerd myself out here, is essentially the plot for every Ray Bradbury short story I ever read in the mid-1960s. For the second piece, the one you created by simply inserting various keywords and saying, take it away, and this so-called podcast. And I'm going to just ballpark the figure, and this is the only, because I know Dean was going, we're all going to be out of work in 2 years. No, we're not, and the reason why we're not is because as you listen to that podcast, you realize that that podcast could not exist without the work of at least anywhere between 40 to 150 humans who have covered that whole issue in various ways on various platforms. The thing about AI, and this is where things get dangerous, though, is right now, if it's being used ethically, it cannot generate a reality. It can only repeat it and make it sound very, very genuine. However, if people are unethical, if people get a hold of, say, someone's voice, someone's image, and quite frankly, my concern is right now, with so much at stake in this U.S. election, you may see some attempts at various forms of deep fake mudslinging before voting day in November. But all that said, what I think people have to understand about AI is that it cannot be more than the sum of what is already out there and what is collected. They haven't made AI yet that's capable of conducting an actual interview and taking that information and then, or asking questions that haven't already been programmed and then creating a finished product. So we have some hope in that. But man, oh man, the fact that this thing sounds so legit. And the only thing for me, the only other tell that this was not real was the lack of oohs and ahs and pauses and coughs and perhaps, as I'm doing right now, searching for words. That didn't exist in any of it. But that said, we can glean some hope from the fact that they certainly can present a very nicely cooked sausage. However, they have no idea on how to make that sausage.
Okay. I mean, to me, if I know just as much or just as little about this as you do, right? I'm just kind of working my way through it. I would think that part of it, of generating their own ideas, is not that far down the road. And that's even more troubling.
Not at all. And you can spin something. As I say, you can cause a lot of trouble. And in doing so, even if people don't trust anything they hear or anything they see, then the damage is already done.
Exactly.
And then we're even in a deeper swamp than we're in right now. But all that said, man, I got to tell you, I think what you did today was very, very important, if only to let people know just how polished and just how easy it is to be taken in by this stuff.
Yeah, for people who didn't hear it, by the way, I played it in the 3:30 half hour. I'm going to play part of it again just after about 5:45 to, some of the news you may have missed portion of the show, because I think it's important for people to hear, because I can't tell you how many texts, Jim, I got that said, wow, I don't believe it. That was amazing. Yeah. I can't believe those are not real people. So if you didn't hear it, I'll have it on at about 5:45.
Well, I felt bad for the guy who called his wife and discovered the phone number doesn't exist.
Wasn't that amazing, though?
No, it's just
that's
just
crazy.
Incredible.
All right, let me get to what's going on. Big night tonight, of course, in Quebec City, because the LA Kings are in town to play the Boston Bruins, and some people will be going,
and some people won't be. Like Gary Bettman, like anybody from the NHL. This was the rationale for throwing $7 million at this. Well, we want to get a franchise back. People in Quebec City have gone long enough without a hockey team. They want to get one back. Well, the fact is, the message is very clear from Gary Bettman. I'm sorry, I got to wash my hair tonight, but good luck with the exhibition game. And of course, the morning began so lovely with the Liberals exhibiting a certain amount of mischievous originality, giving Francois Legault a king jersey, a king of the deficit, $11 billion deficit, handing that over to him at the usual morning press conference that they hold to address various issues in the news. You know, when they start giving you parody jerseys, Aaron, they say it's close to being over. It's like when the fat lady starts to sing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and now, of all these days, October 3rd, 2 years ago, you and I were talking about, you know, what's going to happen tonight in this general election. Nobody knew we would be where we are right now. But I got to tell you, when you look at just even this week, Francois Legault not just uttering the whole forcible removal of asylum seekers from Quebec, let the feds do it, he's doubling down. And even though every single political faction in this country, every single one, except for, I guess, well, I won't speak for the Conservatives, they haven't piped up. But certainly in Quebec, all the parties have just looked at this and said, this guy, you know, this is nuts, this is crazy. You can't do something like this. And the feds are saying, well, you know, you got a thing called the Charter of Rights, which, of course, in Quebec counts for nothing. Unfortunately, outside of Quebec, every now and then, they like to use the Charter of Rights in terms of freedom of movement, whatever, and you cannot forcibly move someone from one place to another for no reason whatsoever. But this is it. And you have to ask yourself, how long does Francois Legault get to continue to work in this bubble that is increasingly detached, this bubble that used to be a nice, intimate relationship between him and his core supporters out in the regions who were buying into anything he said because they didn't know any better. But now that the bloom's coming off of that rose as well. The party is beginning to tank in the polls, and who knows if they keep going any further, will we see defections? Will we see a palace revolt within the CAQ? It's hard to say. But what we do know is that on this October 3rd, 2024, 2 years after the vote that would send them into a second term, the CAQ is less than a shadow of its former self. And the fact is, Francois Legault's political future was seen utterly bulletproof. The envy of every politician in this country now is anything but certain.
So I want you to hear, because Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon was addressing this today, right? He got stopped and was asked about this whole immigration issue that Legault had and this idea of it forcible removing. Take a quick listen to this. Here's what he said.
It's a disaster. I mean, they know, we know, everyone knows that not only it's not feasible, Ottawa will never do that, Quebec would never do that. And the solutions, they are at the airport, or in terms of incentives given to other provinces to attract a certain number of and people on a voluntary basis. We all know that, so we shouldn't give too much time and credibility to the random statements of François Legault. We are, unfortunately, at that level that the Premier of Quebec has no credibility when he speaks because we know that we can't trust his word.
Ooh. Trying to out-PQ the PQ, I don't think it's working, Jim.
Well, no, it's not working. But the thing that I almost winced when two things he said. When he said Ottawa wouldn't do it, then he adds Quebec wouldn't do that. In other words, this guy is essentially totally disconnected. And then turning around, and remember, he's not talking about he's talking about the Premier of Quebec. And he's saying he's got no credibility. And guess what? He's right. So, and once again, as we say on the show, how we began talking about this, we still have 2 years left. And this, trust me, cannot go on. So I think the big question now is, which way is it going to unfold? How is it going to end? And as I've said repeatedly on this show, how much damage has Francois Legault and his entourage done to Quebec that cannot be undone before we're finally shut of them?
Let me go back while we still have a minute here. You have Mara Risky here. You're saying her departure is a surprise. What do you mean here?
Well, I know we're really tight for time, but let me put it to you this way. When I heard her leaving, when I heard her speech, saying that she was going, yes, by all means, you have your priorities, you got your kids. But I got to tell you, it's 2024, and there's still no room for women in politics. We only had daycare at the National Assembly established since last March on an experimental basis. It is completely stacked against women. A role in politics, I think, is completely unacceptable, unfair, and if Quebec is actually as progressive a society as it says it is, It should bring some real changes that will allow women to not have to think twice before they step up to give public service.
So, okay, I'm trying to understand. So you're suggesting that her decision to leave is based on that fact? She just didn't address it?
Well, I mean, you can't, she basically, no, she made it clear. I had a choice. I chose my son, which in and of itself is ridiculous. Is you're saying, you have a choice. You can raise your family, or you can be an elected official. There's something wrong with that picture, especially when most male candidates do not. We have a lot of them who leave politics. I want to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
But all that said, excuse me, I think there's something very, very retrograde, something very, very wrong when any woman, especially a woman as accomplished as Mara Lewski, has got to make that choice. And I think we're all her kids, God love her, they're going to have a great mom. But the rest of us, I think we got shortchanged on the deal.
Jim, 30 seconds. I'm asking the question about Canada's fertility rate. It's dipped to a new all-time low. Why aren't people having kids?
Uncertainty, economic uncertainty, and quite frankly, uncertainty, if you're younger, uncertainty of where the hell we're going to be even in 10 years' time.
We'll leave it at that. That's my question coming back. Jim, thanks so much.
Matt.